My fiancé left me when my family went bankrupt. It was actually a $200 million sale, and she missed out on everything. What she didn't know was that the entire financial collapse she witnessed was carefully orchestrated, and her reaction to it revealed exactly who she really was. Let me take you back to January 2022, when everything seemed perfect. I was 31 years old, engaged to Melissa Crawford, a corporate attorney who'd stolen my heart at a charity gala 3 years earlier. We were planning a June wedding at the Ritz-Carlton with 300 guests and a honeymoon in the Maldives. Everything was arranged, deposits paid, and invitations sent. My family owned Crawford Technologies, a software company my grandfather started in his garage 40 years ago. By 2022, we'd grown to 400 employees and $85 million in annual revenue. I was the VP of Business Development, my sister Kate was CFO, and Dad was still CEO, though he'd been talking about retirement. Melissa knew all of this, of course. She'd attended countless company events, met our major clients, and loved telling her law firm colleagues about the tech dynasty she was marrying into. Her Instagram was filled with photos of us at industry conferences, charity galas, and exclusive events that came with being part of a successful family business. What Melissa didn't know was that we'd been in secret acquisition talks with TechCore Industries for 8 months. TechCore was a $12 billion conglomerate looking to expand their portfolio, and Crawford Technologies was exactly what they needed. The preliminary offer was $180 million, potentially reaching $220 million with earn-out provisions. But there was a problem. The tech industry was experiencing a downturn, and TechCore's board was getting nervous about big acquisitions. Our investment banker, Richard Chun, advised us that we needed to appear distressed to get the deal finalized at our target price. If TechCore thinks they're rescuing a struggling company, Richard explained at a February meeting, they'll move faster and pay more than if they think they're competing for a hot property. Dad, Kate, and I spent 2 weeks debating this strategy. It meant temporarily tanking our public image, potentially damaging relationships, and definitely testing everyone around us. What about Melissa? Kate asked me during one late-night strategy session. She's going to see the financials crater. How are you going to explain that? I'll tell her after everything closes, I said confidently. She'll understand it was a business strategy. Kate gave me a look I couldn't quite read. You sure about that? I was sure. Melissa and I had been together for 3 years. We'd weathered long-distance periods when she was assigned to her firm's London office. We'd supported each other through career challenges and family difficulties. I thought our relationship was built on something deeper than money. The strategy began in March. We started by losing 2 major contracts, which were actually just shifted to subsidiaries we'd set up months earlier. We laid off 30 employees, offering them generous severance packages and promises to rehire them after the acquisition closed. We leaked financial projections showing declining revenue and increased debt. The business press picked up the story immediately. Crawford Technologies struggles in downturn, read the headlines. Industry analysts started questioning our management decisions. Competitors circled like sharks, trying to poach our best talent. Richard called after the first wave of negative publicity. It's working. TechCore's CEO called this morning. He thinks you're desperate and is pushing his board to accelerate the timeline. At home, Melissa was supportive at first. She held me while I pretended to stress about the company's problems and offered to help review our legal exposure from layoffs. These downturns are cyclical, she assured me. Crawford Technologies has survived worse. But as March turned into April and the negative news continued, I noticed subtle changes. Melissa stopped posting photos of us on social media. She declined an invitation to my cousin's wedding, claiming work conflicts. When her parents visited from Connecticut, she made excuses to avoid introducing them to my family. The real test came in late April when we sold our company headquarters to generate emergency cash. This was actually a sale-leaseback arrangement with a firm Richard had connected us with, and we'd buy the building back after the acquisition closed. But to the outside world, it looked like we were liquidating assets to survive. The day the headquarters sale was announced, Melissa came home from work looking pale. I saw the news, she said quietly. Are things really that bad? It's challenging, I admitted, sticking to the script we'd agreed on. But we're exploring all options. What kind of options? We might have to sell the company. There's interest from a few buyers, but nothing solid yet. This was technically true. We had multiple offers, and TechCore was indeed the strongest. Melissa sat down heavily on our couch. Sell? As in, you'd lose the family business. We'd get something for it, I said carefully, but probably not what it's worth. Over the next 2 weeks, I watched Melissa transform into someone I barely recognized. She started working late most nights, claiming her caseload had increased. She went to her gym sessions alone instead of inviting me along like she used to. Her phone was suddenly always face down on the table. The breaking point came on a Saturday in early May. We were supposed to finalize seating arrangements for the wedding, but Melissa kept finding reasons to delay the conversation. Maybe we should postpone, she finally said, not meeting my eyes. Postpone the meeting. The wedding. Just for a few months, until things stabilize with your family's situation. My stomach dropped. Melissa, we've already sent invitations. People have made travel plans. I know, but think about the optics. Your family is potentially losing everything, and we're throwing a massive expensive wedding? It looks tone deaf. We're not losing everything. The business might sell, but we'll be fine. Will you? Melissa stood up and started pacing. Be honest with me, Andrew. What happens if the company goes under completely? What happens to your lifestyle, your connections, your position in the industry? Is that what this is about? Money and status? Don't make me the villain here, Melissa shot back. I'd built a life with certain expectations. You were the VP of a major tech company from a successful family. Now you might be unemployed from a failed business. That's a significant change. We argued for hours, but I could see the decision was already made in her mind. The woman I'd planned to marry was more attached to my family's success than she was to me. 3 days later, Melissa called off the wedding entirely. I need time to think, she said, though we both knew what that really meant. This is all happening so fast, and I need to be sure about my future. Our future, I corrected. Right. Our future. She moved out the following weekend, taking her things while I was supposedly at an emergency company meeting. She left the engagement ring on the kitchen counter with a note saying we should talk once everything settles down. I called Kate, devastated and furious. She actually left, I said, still not quite believing it. She saw the headlines about the company struggling and just bailed. I'm sorry, Andrew. Kate's voice was sympathetic, but not entirely surprised. I know this hurts, but maybe it's better you found out now than after you were married. How do I tell her the truth? How do I explain that this was all strategic? You don't. Not yet. Let's see how this plays out. While I was dealing with my personal collapse, the business strategy was working perfectly. By late May, TechCore had accelerated their timeline and increased their offer to $195 million, with earnout provisions potentially reaching $240 million. They were convinced they were getting a bargain on a distressed asset. Richard called with updates almost daily. They're moving fast because they think your competitors might swoop in. The fear of missing out is doing exactly what we hoped. The final negotiations happened in early June, right when my wedding was supposed to take place. Instead of getting married, I was in a conference room with lawyers finalizing the biggest deal in Crawford Technologies history. The acquisition closed on June 15th. TechCore paid $208 million upfront, with earnout provisions that would likely bring the total to $235 million over 3 years. After taxes and transaction costs, my personal share was approximately $32 million, with another $12 to $15 million likely from earnouts. We'd done it. We'd successfully sold the company for more than Richard's initial projections, and we'd protected our employees by negotiating retention bonuses and job guarantees. The next day, we held a company-wide meeting to announce the sale and reveal the truth to our employees. I know the past few months have been stressful, Dad addressed the assembled staff. And I owe you all an apology for the uncertainty. But I want you to know that everything you witnessed was part of a carefully planned strategy. You could feel the confusion in the room as Dad explained the sale-leaseback arrangements, the subsidiary transfers, and the intentional negative publicity. Some people were relieved. Others were angry at being kept in the dark. Tommy Rodriguez, our head of engineering, stood up. You let us think we might lose our jobs, our healthcare, our retirement plans. You let us worry and stress for months. That's not okay. Dad nodded solemnly. You're right, Tommy. And that's why every employee who stayed with us through this period is getting a retention bonus equal to 6 months' salary, plus guaranteed positions at TechCore with better benefits packages. The mood shifted dramatically. People who'd been fuming moments earlier started calculating their unexpected bonuses. The room filled with excited chatter as the reality sank in. We also announced that all 30 employees we'd laid off were being rehired immediately with back pay and bonuses. We'd been covering their health insurance the entire time through a shell company, though they hadn't known it. The business press coverage flipped overnight. Crawford Technologies' brilliant exit strategy replaced the earlier negative headlines. Industry analysts praised our negotiation tactics. Richard Chun did interviews explaining how we'd executed a textbook distress sale strategy. My phone started blowing up with calls and texts. Relatives I hadn't heard from in years suddenly wanted to reconnect. Business contacts who'd been cold during our troubles were warm and congratulatory. And buried among hundreds of messages was one from Melissa. We need to talk. I saw the news about the sale. Can we meet? I stared at that message for a long time before showing it to Kate. She wants to talk now that the money's confirmed, Kate said flatly. Are you actually considering seeing her? I want to hear what she has to say. Andrew, She left you when she thought you were broke. She called off your wedding because the optics looked bad. What explanation could possibly make that okay? Maybe she'll apologize. Maybe she'll explain that she was scared and made a mistake. Kate looked at me with pure exasperation. And you'd take her back? After she showed you exactly who she is. I met Melissa for coffee 4 days after the sale announcement. She looked beautiful and successful, and like she'd never spent a single night crying over our broken engagement. Her designer handbag probably cost more than I used to make in a month before the sale. Andrew, she said warmly, reaching across the table like she was going to take my hand. I pulled back. I'm so happy for you and your family. The sale is incredible news. Is that why you wanted to meet? To congratulate me? I wanted to talk about us. I know I handled things poorly when the company was struggling. I let fear cloud my judgment. You called off our wedding, Melissa. You moved out without saying goodbye. You made it very clear that you were only interested in being with me while my family looked successful. That's not fair. I was protecting myself. You have to understand, I've worked incredibly hard to build my career and my life. The idea of marrying into a failing business, of being associated with that failure, it scared me. So you ran. I needed space to think clearly, but now I see that I overreacted. Your family navigated a difficult situation brilliantly, and I should have had more faith in you. She leaned forward, lowering her voice. We could still make this work, Andrew. Maybe we postpone the wedding to next spring. Give ourselves time to rebuild trust. I actually laughed, which clearly wasn't a reaction she expected. Rebuild trust. Melissa, you left me at the exact moment you thought I might need you most. The only thing that changed is the number in my bank account. That's not true. I just needed time to process everything. You needed time to see if the money was real, I corrected. And now that it is, you're back. But here's the thing, Melissa. I don't want someone who's only there for the good times. I don't want someone who measures our relationship by my net worth. Melissa's expression hardened. You're being dramatic. Every relationship has practical considerations. You're right. And practically speaking, you failed the only test that mattered. You showed me that your love had conditions, and those conditions were financial. So what? You're just going to throw away 3 years because I had one moment of doubt. 1 moment. You spent weeks pulling away from me. You hid me from your parents. You canceled our wedding. These weren't momentary doubts, Melissa. They were calculated decisions. I stood up to leave, but Melissa grabbed my arm. You're making a mistake, she said, and there was anger in her voice now. Do you know how many women would love to be in my position? You think you're going to find someone better? I hope so. I hope I find someone who cares about who I am, not what I'm worth. I walked out of that coffee shop feeling lighter than I had in months. Kate had been right. Melissa had revealed her true character, and I was lucky to have discovered it before we got married. The aftermath of the sale kept me busy for months. There were earn-out milestones to hit, integration meetings with TechCore's team, and decisions about my future role. TechCore offered me a senior VP position overseeing several divisions, which would more than double my pre-sale salary. But more importantly, I was genuinely happy for the first time since the engagement ended. I spent weekends hiking and reconnecting with friends I'd neglected during the wedding planning. I took an unpaid 3-month sabbatical and traveled through Southeast Asia with my sister. On that trip, Kate and I finally talked openly about Melissa and the entire situation. I knew she was wrong for you, Kate admitted one evening in Vietnam. But it wasn't my place to say anything before. She was always very concerned with appearances, with status, with being part of the right circles. I didn't want to see it. I was in love with who I thought she was. Most people are. But you know what I'm proudest of? You didn't chase her after the sale closed. You didn't try to prove something or get revenge. You just walked away. It still hurts sometimes. 3 years is a long time to invest in someone. It is, but better 3 years than a lifetime. When I returned from Asia, I moved into a new condo downtown and started my role at TechCore. The work was challenging and engaging, exactly what I needed to focus my energy on something productive. 6 months after the sale, I ran into Melissa at a charity gala. She was there with Bradley Whitmore, a hedge fund manager I'd met at a few events. They'd apparently been dating for 3 months. Andrew, Melissa said with forced casualness. Good to see you. You remember Bradley? I do. Congratulations to you both. Bradley shook my hand enthusiastically. Melissa's told me all about your family's incredible exit. That takes serious strategic thinking. It was a team effort, I said, genuinely not wanting to engage in this conversation. As I walked away, I heard Bradley ask Melissa, "That's your ex? The tech guy?" I didn't hear her response, but I didn't need to. Melissa had made her choices, and I'd made mine. The real turning point came 8 months after the sale at a TechCore company retreat. I was leading a breakout session on strategic partnerships when I noticed someone in the back taking detailed notes. Dr. Sarah Chun was TechCore's newly hired Chief Innovation Officer, brought in to oversee their AI initiatives. We ended up at the same dinner table that evening, and I was immediately struck by how different she was from anyone I'd dated before. Sarah had a PhD in computer science from MIT and had spent 5 years at a major research lab before joining TechCore. She was brilliant, curious, and completely unimpressed by wealth or status. The Crawford acquisition was smart, she said when she learned about my background. But I'm more interested in what you're going to build next. We talked for hours about technology trends, industry challenges, and our shared frustration with how slowly corporate innovation moved. Sarah didn't care that my family had sold a company for 9 figures. She cared about ideas and impact and building things that mattered. We started having lunch together weekly, then coffee, then long walks discussing projects we wanted to launch. 3 months into our friendship, Kate met Sarah at a TechCore event and pulled me aside. "That's the one," Kate said simply. "We're just friends. For now. But Andrew, that woman looks at you the way you deserve to be looked at. Like you're interesting, not like your status symbol." Kate was right, as usual. Sarah and I started dating officially in June 2023, exactly 1 year after my wedding to Melissa was supposed to happen. By then, I'd received the first earn-out payment from the Crawford sale, bringing my total net worth to roughly $45 million. I didn't tell Sarah about the money for our first 3 months of dating. We split checks at restaurants, took turns paying for movies, and I drove my 5-year-old Tesla that I'd had since before the sale. I wanted to be sure that what we had was real. When I finally explained my financial situation, Sarah's reaction was perfect. "Okay," she said with a shrug. "Does this mean you're buying lunch today?" "That's it. Just okay." "Andrew, I knew your family sold Crawford for a fortune. Everyone at TechCore knows. I didn't bring it up because it's not relevant to who you are as a person." We got engaged in December 2023, 18 months after I'd called off my original wedding plans. The proposal happened during a camping trip in Big Sur, just the 2 of us and the stars, with no social media photos or public announcements until weeks later. Sarah's engagement ring cost $8,000, less than a tenth of what I'd spent on Melissa's. But Sarah had specifically requested something simple and ethical, caring more about the ring's origin than its size or price. "The wedding industry is insane," Sarah said when we started planning. "Can we just do something small and meaningful?" We got married in September 2024 at Kate's backyard with 40 guests, catered by a local restaurant Sarah loved. My parents were there, both remarried by then. Tommy Rodriguez came, bringing several former Crawford employees. Richard Chun attended with his husband. And conspicuously absent was anyone from Melissa's world. During the reception, Dad pulled me aside for a rare emotional moment. "I'm proud of you, son. Not because of the sale or the money. I'm proud because you found someone who sees you clearly and loves you anyway." The real kicker came 2 months after the wedding. I was having lunch with an old college friend who still worked in the legal industry. "Did you hear about Melissa Crawford?" he asked. My stomach tightened. I hadn't heard her name in months. "What about her?" "She got fired from her firm. Apparently, she'd been billing personal expenses to client accounts. Not huge amounts, but enough to constitute fraud. Word is she's scrambling to find another position, but her reputation is shot." I felt a strange mix of emotions. Not satisfaction exactly, but perhaps validation. The woman who'd left me for not being successful enough had destroyed her own career through ethical shortcuts. "And the guy she was dating, Bradley something?" my friend continued. "Hedge fund collapsed 6 months ago. He's under investigation for securities fraud." I told Sarah about this conversation that evening while we were cooking dinner together in our modest downtown apartment. "Do you feel vindicated?" she asked, chopping vegetables with precise efficiency. "Honestly, I just feel grateful. Grateful that Melissa showed her true colors before we got married. Grateful that her leaving forced me to reevaluate what I wanted in a partner. Grateful that I found you." Sarah kissed me, leaving a smudge of flour on my cheek. "For the record, I would have loved you even if the bankruptcy had been real." "I know. That's why I married you." Today, almost 3 years after the Crawford Technologies sale, life looks completely different than I'd imagined. The final earn-out payments brought my total proceeds to $44 million. Sarah and I are building a tech incubator focused on AI applications in healthcare. We live comfortably but not ostentatiously, driving practical cars and living in a nice but not extravagant home. I occasionally see updates about Melissa on LinkedIn. She eventually found another legal position, though at a smaller firm with less prestige. She's no longer with Bradley, who apparently did face charges, though I never followed up on the details. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd told Melissa the truth during the bankruptcy period. Would she have stayed? Would she have been supportive knowing it was all strategic? But then I remember her face when she talked about optics and expectations and protecting herself. The truth is, someone who truly loved me wouldn't have needed to know about the secret sale. They would have stood by me regardless. The fake bankruptcy taught me that adversity is the ultimate relationship test. When you strip away the money, the status, and the appearances, what's left reveals everything. With Melissa, what remained was calculation and self-interest. With Sarah, what remained was partnership and genuine connection. Kate jokes that the Crawford Technologies sale was the best investment our family ever made, not because of the money, but because it saved me from a disastrous marriage. She's probably right. The 9-figure exit gave me financial freedom, but watching Melissa leave during my fake bankruptcy gave me something more valuable, clarity about what I actually needed in a life partner. So yes, my fiancé called off our wedding when my family went bankrupt. And yes, that bankruptcy was actually a $200+ million sale. But the real story isn't about the money I made or the relationship I lost. It's about the relationship I found after I stopped trying to impress people and started being honest about who I was. Melissa wanted a successful tech VP from a wealthy family. Sarah wanted a partner who was curious, driven, and kind. The first required specific circumstances to maintain. The second required nothing except being myself. In the end, the strategic bankruptcy wasn't just about selling a company. It was about revealing who people really were when the appearance of success disappeared. Some people failed that test spectacularly, but the ones who passed it, like Sarah, proved they were worth building a life with. Thanks for sticking around through this whole journey. Sometimes the best things in life come from the worst moments, and losing Melissa turned out to be one of the luckiest breaks I ever got. Until we meet again, folks, if you made it to the end, drop a comment. I love reading all your thoughts.